Wow. Okay. So this has been an interesting week for gaming news. Many of you may be aware about reports and rumors in regards to Xbox's shift in strategy, where they may very well be planning to take Xbox exclusives outside of the platform and release them on rival consoles like PlayStation 5. This was first reported by Xbox Era in a report titled Exclusive Microsoft Plans Starfield Release for PlayStation 5. A change in strategy is upon us. In the article itself, there are more details talking about how there have already been rumors that Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves would be making their way to rival platforms, but the fact that Starfield might be making its way to PlayStation 5 according to their sources, now that's a huge deal, because keep in mind that Xbox and Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard and also bought ZeniMax to essentially make their standing in the games industry stronger. And now we're finding that they're going to put those games on other platforms anyway. And Starfield, it was supposed to be like the flagship Xbox release following that acquisition of ZeniMax. Now, Starfield didn't end up being the mega hit in terms of critical reception, at least. But, you know, it is still very much a Bethesda single-player AAA release. Apparently, the plan is to release Starfield on PlayStation 5 after the release of the Shattered Space expansion that is coming for Xbox and PC. And if reports are true, it may not just stop at Starfield. We may be looking at a wide array of Xbox exclusives that are coming to PlayStation 5, and this is further proven by Microsoft having made additional investment into PlayStation 5 development kits to support ongoing development efforts for that platform. Now, this shift in strategy wasn't something that was universally accepted within Microsoft. There was internal debate. According to our sources, Microsoft's senior leadership have reportedly debated the various pros and cons. Not everyone is necessarily happy with the decision, but recouping the potential money left on the table by not releasing elsewhere has arguably won out. It's interesting because Microsoft recently reported that their gaming sector is actually making a little more money than even their Windows stuff is. But at the same time, when it comes to just pure profit, not revenue, but rather profit, their gaming sector might not be making enough to offset the expenses that come with, acquisitions and game development and all these things. So it would seem as though the plan is to make these games available elsewhere so they can reap more rewards or more revenue. Validating this report is the fact that there are others who are corroborating what Xbox Era has reported here. Here's Nate the Hate 2, for example, stating this report is accurate. Starfield will land on PlayStation. I've heard similar, but opted to wait on reporting this information until the PlayStation 5 release timeline was finalized. As the report states, the PS5 release will come after the arrival of the expansion DLC on Xbox and PC. And then not long after, another report came from none other than Tom Warren from The Verge, who was reporting that Indiana Jones, which was shown during the Xbox Developer Direct stream, it was sort of the marquee showcase of that streaming event, which was said to be an Xbox Series, PC, and Game Pass title that apparently is no longer going to be exclusive. It will also eventually come to PlayStation 5, despite it being a Bethesda published game, Bethesda now being under the Microsoft and Xbox umbrella. Now, it's hard to say whether all, Xbox exclusive games or games that would be Xbox exclusive are coming to PlayStation 5 or only a select few, the ones that Xbox pick out. According to The Verge, apparently the company is weighing which titles will remain exclusive and which ones will appear on Switch or PlayStation 5. So it seems as though stuff is still up for debate, but it looks like Microsoft and Xbox aren't shying away from taking some of their biggest releases like Starfield and Indiana Jones and putting those on rival platforms. And if they were to do so, apparently it would be sort of a timed exclusivity on Xbox, so you can play it on Xbox first, and then a few months later, they would come out on PlayStation 5. So in the case of Indiana Jones, for example, it would first be an Xbox exclusive, and then after a short period of exclusivity, it'll come out on PlayStation 5 some months later. So maybe like a 6 months timed exclusivity for Xbox, and then the game comes out on PlayStation 5. So the advantage of owning an Xbox would be that you get to play those Xbox published or Microsoft published games first, but if you get a PlayStation 5, you have the long-term advantage because you get to play both Xbox games eventually and also play those PlayStation exclusives that will remain on the PlayStation platform that will likely not go to Xbox. Though what we currently have is still reports and rumors, and Microsoft hasn't fully detailed and nailed down their plans yet, and there's still apparently intense internal debate at Microsoft over which Xbox games to bring to rival consoles. So not everything is set in stone. We don't know if every single Xbox published game will be coming to rival consoles or if it's just a select few. And then here we have one last report courtesy of Video Games Chronicle, who reference a reporting from Giant Bomb's Jeff Grubb, who apparently reported that Microsoft is considering bringing Gears of War to PlayStation. Gears of War has often been considered to be an Xbox and PC IP. It coming to PlayStation would definitely be breaking new ground. Now, speaking of breaking new ground, that brings us to the exciting sponsor of today's video, Xreal, makers of augmented reality glasses that are fantastic for gaming. This pair right here is the Xreal Air 2 Pro, and the first thing that struck me was how fashionable they are to wear. They, for the most part, just look like your regular standard sunglasses, so you won't stand out too much wearing these. But the real magic happens when you pair an Xreal beam with it, plug a gaming device like a Switch, Steam Deck, ROG Ally, PS5, Xbox, PC, you name it, and put them on. With a 1080p 120Hz micro OLED displays per eye, offering a vivid, colorful, and silky smooth picture and gameplay experience. I was actually really surprised how good the images looked when I started using this device. It felt like I was basically wearing a huge TV on my face. It's actually pretty crazy. Another wow factor is the electromagnetic dimming function, which allows you to set how transparent or dark the glasses are with a press of a button and adjust your level of immersion on the fly, which is super convenient and also just really cool tech. The speakers that sit next to your ear sound pretty nice too, loud and clear for an ideal gaming session. There are many scenarios where these glasses can come in handy. If the TV at home is taken and you need an extra private screen to play games on, if you want to get in a more comfortable position and have a screen you can place anywhere or that will follow you around while you game, if you need a portable screen to use during car and plane rides for on-the-go gaming, just to name a few, these glasses are perfect. They're really ergonomic, lightweight, and comfortable to boot. I had no trouble wearing these for hours on end. If you're a gamer and are in need of a more flexible solution for large screen gaming at home and or on the go, Xreal's got you covered. You can get your Xreal Air 2 Pro by using my link in the description box and comment section below, and you can use my code to get 5% off your order, as well as to support the channel. Going back to the news, there's another report from Tim Dog, who apparently heard from sources about what's going on behind the scenes, and here's what he's reporting. Tim has heard that Call of Duty may not be coming to Game Pass. Hardware sales have not met the projected sales, and the CFO got spooked. So Microsoft has been shifting away from putting all of their eggs in the basket of selling hardware. They're trying to become more of like a game service, which is why Game Pass is being emphasized. And, you know, this is something that they've kind of talked about before. Game Pass is sort of the primary thing that they're pushing more than anything. They're trying to make Game Pass as compatible with as many devices and platforms as possible. And in general, their goal is to make their games as easily accessible and purchasable as possible, no matter what device you're using. Tim Dog also reported that despite having consoles that were selling for $350, no one cared, or it didn't make as big of a dent as Microsoft would have liked. Xbox One was more wanted than Series consoles. Really? That's actually kind of crazy if that's true. They said the hardware is dead and they're seeing declines in hardware year over year. Game Pass is unsustainable. The market they have is not enough to offset the cost. So initially, the main thing they were pushing for was to make Game Pass their flagship service, and they were hoping that subscription numbers will be high enough to offset costs and for this to be sustainable. But it seemed as though that game plan isn't working out quite as expected, which might be in part why Microsoft and Xbox, or at least the leadership, are deciding that they need to make more money, and they can do so by bringing their games to, you know, PlayStation 5, where there's a huge audience base of players, significantly more than Xbox Series. That's dozens of millions of potential customers who have gone untapped, and it seems as though Microsoft is currently in a position, or at least leadership perceives Microsoft and Xbox to be in a position where they need to leverage that audience. And if they even go as far as releasing their games on Switch, or, you know, the upcoming Switch 2, that's an even bigger audience base for them to be able to leverage, for them to be able to sell their games to directly and make a significant amount of revenue. Tim continued that he heard from someone at Microsoft that you may not like Xbox when they get Activision. They want return on investment. He heard that Xbox has an insane showcase with tons of games, but everyone is going to be saying asterisks. The leaks happened because a Microsoft employee who didn't want this to happen happened, leaked it, so there would be a public outcry. This is still rumors, this is still secondhand information, but I would not be surprised if that particular rumor turned out to be true. Multiple sources are reporting that there is a lot of internal debating and internal strife within Microsoft about this decision. So an employee or a number of employees going, we need to get this out so that, fans can express their opinions about this because we don't like this direction. Like, that to me, it makes sense. These bullet points close off with Microsoft now has no problem buying more companies in the future if all games go to all platforms. And finally, Tim thinks they will go all digital with ads on Game Pass pre-roll or at the end of a chapter, e.g. like a dragon, and AI community managers. Well, that sounds freaking awful, but we have at the very least seen indications of this first bid where Tim believes Xbox will go all digital. Recently, Microsoft laid off the entire department at Xbox that deals with shipping physical retail copies to retailers. And on top of that, we saw leaks from Microsoft suggesting that their upcoming Xbox Series refreshes will be all digital. Next up, I want to highlight a report from Jez, who seems to have his ears and the behind-the-scenes goings-ons of all of this and has heard some rumblings here and there. He tweeted, Xbox has no plans to quit hardware, though it seems clear that they are definitely not putting an emphasis on it. Satya said at the quarterly earnings call that Xbox console users are record high. Yes, heard some games are going multi-platform. Again, nobody's saying that every single Xbox published game is going multi-platform, but at the very least, some are, and some of them are high profile. This is a response, in my opinion, in part to Steam Deck having both PlayStation and Xbox exclusives, and Steam Deck 2 being more powerful. And finally, just kind of put out there that this is a brave new gaming world that's coming. Tom Warren from The Verge also made it a point to highlight that just because names for games that might come to PlayStation 5 that are Xbox published are being thrown out there doesn't mean that they will 100% launch. Plans are still in flux. But the fact that the consideration is even there does highlight that there's a big shift in Microsoft's Xbox strategy that is emerging. Analysts like Daniel Ahmad weighed in saying that a lot of people are jumping the gun and are making too many assumptions right now over something that hasn't been officially announced. And he's someone who's looking at it from a business perspective and saying that this actually makes sense for Microsoft. Ultimately, this move will make sense for Microsoft from a financial perspective and allow gamers to choose their preferred option for playing Xbox games next gen, while allowing Microsoft to reinvest that back into Xbox services. But on the other hand, there is a loyal Xbox community who feel like their loyalty has been taken advantage of, and they feel like this is a less safe ecosystem because there's a possibility that people may gravitate towards PlayStation and leave Xbox behind in the dust because PlayStation users will know that one day they'll get high-profile Xbox games like Starfield and Indiana Jones, and a lot of people feel like this will just render the Xbox hardware and Xbox ecosystem moot. But from a business standpoint, we're talking about hundreds of millions of potential customers that Microsoft and Xbox could tap into to make revenue, and that money could be used to invest back into the Xbox and their gaming division. Now, after all of this broke, a day later, Phil Spencer finally took to Twitter to very briefly address this, saying that there will be more information later. He tweeted, "We're listening and we hear you. We have been planning a business update event for next week where we look forward to sharing more details with you about our vision for the future of Xbox. Stay tuned." In response to this, there's plenty of dissent against this potential move and this potential strategy shift. Plenty of people detailing here's what would happen if these rumors are true and how the Xbox ecosystem would kind of fall apart because Xbox would become irrelevant as a result of PlayStation being able to capitalize on both Xbox and PlayStation games and whatnot. Here's a tweet that has gained thousands of views saying, making Xbox/Microsoft full third party will be in the long term worse for gaming overall. And keep in mind, I'm basically a PlayStation fanboy saying this. Competition is good. When y'all compete, we win. That's another factor. People feel like this is Microsoft kind of throwing the flag on the whole, console wars. I don't like to use that term because it gets very, tribalistic. But these are companies who are competing, and this kind of feels like Microsoft is throwing in the towel, at least in the traditional form of competition of them, selling as many hardware units and, game copies as possible. It feels like Microsoft is slowly transitioning into something more akin to Sega. Recall that once upon a time, Sega made game consoles, but eventually they transitioned more into becoming game publishers. It feels like Microsoft is trying to do more of that, putting less emphasis on hardware, more on services and software seems to be the direction they're going for, and just spreading their games as far and wide as possible. Others like Synth Potato here tweeted, bring Xbox to multi-platform will devalue the platform. Please don't, which has gained a lot of likes and plenty of just Xbox owners saying this just feels like a shitty move for us, Xbox fans who stuck with a platform under the promises that you made, Phil Spencer and the Xbox team. So that's kind of where the discussion's at from a fan base standpoint. Other games industry pundits and journalists like Ryan McCaffrey have criticized the lackluster communication on the part of Xbox and how they always seem to fail to get ahead of story, creating this kind of community dissent and community chaos. He tweeted, I respect the heck out of Phil, but constructive criticism time. Their messaging is almost always reactive rather than proactive. Their brand is in a constant defensive state. It's been this way since 2013 and makes them look weak, honestly. Sony and Nintendo aren't like this. He also noted how Microsoft and Xbox's greatest weakness has always been a lack of quantity and quality of exclusives, and now the strategy is to essentially stop making their exclusive games exclusive. Just seems counterproductive to all of the acquisitions that they're making to strengthen the Xbox brand. Here we have Jen from Windows Central, who echoed how communication has been poor, saying that the damage that's being done to the community and how this has been allowed to spiral over the past few weeks is hugely irresponsible of the Xbox leadership. A fan base has been purposely built and it's crumbling. Which is why I say that having this level of extreme loyalty towards one brand is always dangerous, because that brand at the end of the day is a corporation with executives who don't really give a shit about the customers. They give a shit about the investors. They give a shit about the standing of the company and the corporation, and they will instantly to throw away and kind of spit at the loyalty of fans if it means making more money. So yeah, it is irresponsible. I agree with that, but not unexpected from a corporation. Brand loyalty, I think, is always dangerous. It's always ill-advised to kind of become so attached to a billion trillion dollar corporation that is more concerned about making money than about making fans happy or whatever. We have plenty of hot takes across the board on social media. Gene Park here from the Washington Post noted how people who spend $500 on an Xbox might be pissed to learn that they could have bought a PlayStation 5 and had games like Starfield and also the likes of the upcoming Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Spider-Man and all those PlayStation exclusives. Here's Jazz from Windows Central sort of kind of jokingly suggesting that essentially Xbox players will be the beta testers so that those games can come out more polished and with more content, later on when they're released on PlayStation. We have Paul Tassi here from Forbes, who was flabbergasted at the idea of Starfield in particular coming to PlayStation 5. And he had some more blunt words to share in this tweet that reads, if you're Microsoft, it shows you have no faith in the Xbox ecosystem. It goes counter to all Game Pass claims, throws your fan base into chaos with no public comment. It's not just waving the white flag, it's shooting them out with a t-shirt cannon. Now, others are looking at it from the perspective of what's the big deal here. So here's the director of publishing at Larian Studios, who tweeted, people's minds have been absolutely blown by Microsoft's controversial strategy to get more people playing Xbox games by releasing them to a broader range of people. Now, there is one response from Jez here from Windows Central, who noted how people who invested in the Xbox ecosystem have digitally locked licenses in Xbox hardware that no longer seems to be sort of the emphasis, or might be getting phased out or something. Though do note that there are Xbox Series refreshes coming, so I don't think Xbox hardware is going away, and Jez himself has said that Xbox hardware isn't going away, but there's fears that this could lead to potentially the ecosystem dying, and if that happens, then all the content and save files could potentially be lost and whatnot. Now, that is a potential scenario worth discussing, but it is a potential scenario. It is very hypothetical. Microsoft has not announced plans to kill off Xbox right here and now, and given their emphasis on a unified ecosystem across Xbox hardware and Game Pass and PC and anywhere where Xbox services can be used, I'd be hard-pressed to believe that you'll so easily lose your content. Save files in particular, all of that is handled in the cloud and whatnot. So because of the interconnectedness of the Xbox ecosystem, I think this scenario seems again, very hypothetical, and I'm not going to paint this as something that is very likely. but it's still something worth noting. And there are a bunch of tweets like these worth highlighting from folks like Destin from IGN. Here we have Ethan Gash from Kotaku, who had his own take to give about how this all seems very desperate. Here we have Jeff Grubb, who feels like this is basically Xbox accepting that the console war is over and they're essentially shifting strategies and trying their own way of doing business in the gaming landscape. Take him here, who's a senior writer at Barron's, makes a rather grim prediction that the suits will realize that selling full-price games on PlayStation 5 is just way more profitable than giving them away on Game Pass on day one. So the day one Game Pass launch for Xbox published games, he thinks that that could potentially go away. Daniel Ahmad believes that instead they will still retain the day one perk, but it'll strictly be tied to Ultimate, and it'll be removed from like individual Game Pass subscriptions for PC and Xbox. Instead, they'll make that part of the Ultimate bundle, and there'll also potentially be like price changes to Game Pass to accommodate for the fact that maybe Game Pass isn't as healthy or sustainable as Microsoft might have you believe. I feel like Microsoft giving up on, day one releases for Xbox published games or what should be Xbox exclusives, that would be fatal for the service. I hope this prediction is way off the mark and doesn't have any truth to it. It would shock me personally if Microsoft pulled something like that. Removing the get Xbox published games on day one aspect of Game Pass just kind of like largely defeats the purpose of Xbox Game Pass, I feel. And then there are others who, they have opinions, but ultimately like we don't know really what's officially happening. We have reports, we have rumors, but Microsoft and Xbox haven't officially announced anything yet. Phil Spencer said that in the coming few days he will talk more about all of this. So those folks are saying, I'm just going to bide my time. But at the same time, there is an acknowledgement that there is a paradigm shift happening at Microsoft and Xbox where they're not making their exclusives as exclusive. It's just a matter of like how far they're going to take that. We'll find out soon enough, I suppose, when an official announcement is made. But Jess has suggested that some people have taken this conversation too far and have, reacted in very extreme ways that may not indicate the reality of what Microsoft is actually planning and what's been nailed down. He said, it would be the smart thing to do to, just wait until there's an official statement. I think a lot of people will feel a bit silly in the coming weeks, potentially suggesting he knows something that maybe this situation or this paradigm shift isn't as extreme as some people are making it out to be. But again, a paradigm shift is coming for Microsoft and Xbox. There's going to be some kind of big push towards the release of Xbox published games on rival console PlayStation, the likes of Starfield, the likes of Indiana Jones, Gears of War. That stuff seems to have enough corroboration for that to have a lot of validity. And lending credence to all of this is the fact that Phil Spencer is not denying that these reports have some truth to them. What he's saying here is, we're listening, we hear you, and we're going to talk more about this later. I'm going to lay everything out for you when the time is right, or when we have all our ducks in a row and we have a proper presentation to give you. There's no outright denial here. Phil isn't saying, whoa, hold up, these reports are all completely false. He's not denying the fact that there's at least some kind of paradigm shift happening. In the meantime, though, as a result of Microsoft and Xbox and Phil Spencer's just lack of communication or reactionary communication rather than proactive communication, this is causing a lot of disarray in the Xbox community. A lot of Xbox loyalists obviously are not happy about this. So there are apparently major Xbox influencers who are pulling support over these multi-platform rumors. So this article from Video Games Chronicle highlights tweets and videos and posts by people who are sort of Xbox loyalists or, Xbox creators who are like, I'm out, screw this. What's the point of owning an Xbox at this point? People returning their Xbox Series and its games or selling them off and buying a PlayStation instead. There's stuff like that happening in the Xbox community. So if Xbox and Phil Spencer and the leadership team care about this aspect of their community, they better have something to say soon, and it better be something that doesn't just straight up spit in the face of these Xbox loyalists. I think how big of a deal this is for you will depend on just how loyal you are to specific consoles or brands, or how much you've committed to one specific console. If you've put everything into the Xbox ecosystem, I totally understand how all this is cause for concern, and maybe you feel like, damn, I should have just gone with a PlayStation if this is where we're headed. On the other hand, you've got people like me who are not like super loyal to any one particular brand. I have Nintendo, Xbox, and PlayStation consoles, and I get games on the platforms that I feel are appropriate for those games, and I just get games if they're good, regardless of whether they're exclusive to any one platform or if they're multi-platform. I'll usually get them on PC and stuff like that. So for someone like me, this is just like Xbox expanding its horizons so that more people can play Xbox games and it's easier to access Xbox games. But in terms of Xbox as an ecosystem, them trying to compete with the likes of Nintendo and PlayStation, who have those like Nintendo games and PlayStation games that define them and push hardware units and all these things, that's the area where I think Microsoft and Xbox have stumbled post Xbox 360 era and have not been able to recover from that. And so they've decided, like, we can't just keep trying the same thing over and over again. We got to shift strategies and hope that we can kind of start making more money out of this, money that, we can invest back into the Xbox ecosystem to make this a sustainable and, fruitful endeavor as far as the gaming division of Microsoft is concerned. Whether this is the right strategy or not, I don't know, man. Only time will tell. But I do think that PlayStation players will buy Xbox games in droves. I think when Starfield comes out on PlayStation, it'll sell, a few million more. If Halo, comes out on PlayStation, if Indiana Jones comes out on PlayStation like that, those games will sell a significant amount of units, and that will generate Microsoft a significant amount of money. Like, looking at it from that kind of business perspective, that's kind of what Microsoft wants. But whether the gaming community wants that, whether they think this is good for the long term in terms of like competition and stuff like that, whether the Xbox community and the relevance of Xbox as sort of a game console or game platform brand will, be severely impacted, all that stuff's left to be seen. But the concerns, if you're sort of in that mindset, I think the concerns are warranted. But yeah, it's an interesting time to be an Xbox fan. It's kind of like an unnerving time to be an Xbox fan because there's so much uncertainty right now, and because so many details are vague, and because there's so many unknown factors and variables as to how exactly Microsoft plans to make this paradigm shift happen. Only time will tell. I want to wait until we see an official statement before I really break this down and kind of really give you a proper take. But I did want to present the information as it is now and what people are generally saying and what my initial impressions are of all of this. There's just a lot to process, and I'm going to have to wait. But while we wait for that official statement, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this. Is this a big deal for you? Are you like an Xbox fan or someone who's invested heavily in the Xbox ecosystem and perceive this as a negative? Or are you in the camp of, this is just more people being able to play Xbox games and that could ultimately be good for the Xbox business and whatever? Where do you stand in all of this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.